Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. So it's the middle of winter. For me, it's time to catch up on a lot of gardening jobs that I didn't manage to get done over autumn. And it's for a lot of these things, it's still not too late to start doing these jobs and make sure that you're preparing your garden for next year. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you the kind of jobs that I'm doing right now. Now I've got a little bit of free time to clean up and get my garden into best stead for next year. Now this is a continuation of the series of the last few videos that I've done, so you might see a little bit of repetition, but the reason that I'm repeating it is because they're so important to make sure that your soil's in the best position that it can be, so you can keep growing and have a fruitful season for the year ahead. So right now you've seen me just emptying a pot into this bath. And what I've been doing with this bath is I've been collecting all of my sort of kitchen scraps for the last few months, and I'm doing that in a lot of my containers that I've emptied out. So I'm collecting all my kitchen scraps, all the waste, and I've been emptying all that into this bath, because this is what I'm going to be growing my container garden into again next year. I had a really successful year with this container garden. Now that it's got a good layer of kitchen scraps on it, now what I'm doing is I'm taking my used containers and I'm taking the soil from that and I'm covering everything up. Look, the worms are alive everywhere. When I'm emptying these pots, I've got a container of rainwater I'm just chucking them into, and they'll get washed in there and I'll rinse them off, and it'll just kill two birds with one stone. All of these plants that I'm pulling out, they can go straight onto the compost heap. So a lot of this is spent compost, so it's going to be nutrient deficient. But because of the way that we've added all those kitchen scraps and all that organic matter that's not broken down, that's just going to feed all of this, and the worm activity is going to just revitalise all of this, and it's going to turn it into lovely growing material. So don't worry about the fact that it might have a little bit of nutrient loss in it. Absolutely don't worry about it. Okay, so that's my bath ready now for planting for next year. If I just left it like this, uncovered, completely uncovered, there's going to be a couple of effects. So the sun and the air oxidises carbon, and that'll all break down if I just leave it as it is. And that's one of the things that happens when you dig your soil. When you dig your soil, it gets exposed to the air, it gets exposed to the elements, and it oxidises. So I'm not going to just leave it like that. And the other thing that happens is when it rains, the rain washes out a lot of nutrients from this, and especially with it being a container garden, it'll just wash it straight out. Now if it was in the ground and you were near a body of water, say a stream or something like that, or you had a runoff to a body of water, then what would end up happening is the nutrients in your soil would go into the water and end up polluting that. These are some of the reasons that I say compost isn't a good mulch or a top layer. So if you are going to mulch with compost the way I've done it, then you need to cover it. One of the best materials to cover compost with is cardboard. It's free, it's readily available, it's just going to waste by a lot of people, they're throwing it away. So you can come along and reuse some of that, repurpose it and turn it into something that's actually quite beneficial. And this will all break down and go on and feed your soil. So just like that, I'm going to cover this whole bed. Perfect fit, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So I'll add another box over there and it'll cover it up. I won't do anything else to that bath or that container over winter. I've done the same thing over in this pot here. That needs topping up with more compost because it's had a chance to settle down. Now if you've got container grown shrubs, fruit trees, things like that, now's a perfect time to get to work on them and reinvigorate the soil. If you remember these container grown fruit trees that I planted a few years ago, what's happened is the soil levels dropped a lot. Now the graft union is just there, so if I add more soil to the top, all I'm going to be doing is burying the graft, and then I'm going to be getting shoots coming out from I'm going to be getting new shoots coming out from the graft union rather than from the actual fruit tree. I need to top this up with compost, but I need to do it in a way that's not going to encourage shoots coming from the graft union. One of the things that you'd normally do is move this into a bigger pot, but with the amount of soil that's in there, I don't need to really move it to a bigger pot. I just need to give it more soil. This is a cherry tree. I'm going to just pull it out of the pot, and you can see where its roots are. Absolutely chock full of worms. Yeah, absolutely chock full of worms. I'll just take some homemade compost and put that into the bottom. And then plonk that back onto the top. I'm going to remove a little bit of this mulch. And because it's had a bit of a disturbance, remember the bottom's narrower than the top is. So what's happened is you've got some gap around the side. Now, if I just leave that, it's going to get battered by the wind. So it's important to get some compost in around the side as well. And tuck it in, just like I'd be tucking in a baby to bed. There we go. Nice and revitalised. All those leaves and mulch that can just get sprinkled back over the top. Beautiful. Good. Job's a good one. So I'm going to keep doing that with all of my fruit trees, all my container grown plants, and make sure that they're getting set for next year. The best time to do it is now when they're dormant. So one of the things I've done this year that's different to normal years is I've gone for a zero planting in my greenhouse, or close to zero planting in my greenhouse over winter. Normally I have things growing in the ground that I'm able to pick through the winter, but this year I've gone for an absolutely blank canvas for next year. So one of the things that I want to do is try and get on top of some of the pests and diseases that can overwinter in greenhouses. I want to give it a proper wash. I want to make sure the soil's nice and mulched. And sometimes when you're in confined spaces like this, do you know, outdoors your soil's exposed to the weather, but inside here your soil's not exposed to the weather, and it's a confined space, so you can get disease build-up. So I don't mind actually giving soil inside a greenhouse a dig every now and then, because it just helps get that natural biology going in the soil. So in confined spaces, I've absolutely got no issue with digging if you want to. So I'm going to get on and give this whole area a good clean, get everything out of here, get all of these plant pots out. And you can see it's being used at the moment for temporary wood storage. But all of these plants, they're all getting taken out. None of this is going to be I'm not going to try and keep any of this stuff alive. It's all going for the compost pile. What's the matter with you? Well, you can grab her, she's okay. So while I was cleaning this greenhouse, I gave this a pull and it came loose. But this is one of the things I want to warn you about. It might seem a little bit dusty in here, and that's because of a lot of fungal spores off this bean plant that I was trying to clear. So that's all going to release a fine mist of fungal spores into the air, and it can cause lung infections, so be careful if you're breathing that in. So wear a mask, make sure you've got plenty of ventilation. So I'm going to make sure all these windows are open while I'm doing it. So I've got these squash plants that I'm going to pull out, because we're going to take this and we're going to compost this. There's stuff that I've already spread on the ground, but this one, it's wrapping up this dead fig tree. I don't know why, for whatever reason, it just died. But this squash plant, it's a fig leaf gourd. It was very hardy until we got this. Well, it stayed very strong until we got this final cold that we had a couple of weeks ago, down to -5 here in Leeds. But all this can come up. If you wanted to, you could take this and spread this onto your ground. It's one of the things that I have done in the past, And that's one of the things, and it's what I've done with the other squash plants, is I've spread them on the ground and then covered them with wood chip. I want a bit of a blank canvas so I can see what I'm doing and get on with my planning a little bit. Which is one of the things, well, I'm all right at planning, but it's just sticking to that plan I'm not so good at.
This is a hard
job. Which one's a hard job?
The job I'm doing.
The job you're doing? Okay, I'll find an easier job. Oh, look at that! Right in the middle of, quite visible. So, a squash that we forgot to pick. It's a shame because it's got a little bit cold, and because it's got a little bit cold, it's got a little bit soft. We'll get that cut open today and see if there's anything good in that worth eating. But it might be, some of it might be salvageable. But it's a shame we didn't see it a little bit earlier. These black buckets that you can see under here, there's still potatoes in these. We'll just pick those potatoes anytime we're ready. Don't walk on that, Zaki. Don't walk on that. It's dangerous, Zaki. You can see it was a big old fig tree that just up and died.
I did it, Papa.
Yeah, it just up and died for some absolute unknown reason. You found some orange tomatoes, get them. Get them, we can eat them. Take them.
These are sweet corn plants.
Those things that are sticking out of the ground. Go around that way.
I'm gonna need you to move. I need you to move.
No, she's alright, she's not going to get in your way.
I don't want to.
You're not going to take her leg off, don't worry. Lower down, lower down. See, these sweet corn plants, we're just going to cut them off and leave them, leave the roots in the ground. They're really good at holding the soil together. I know a lot of people don't like it because they take a long time to break down, and that's exactly the reason that I like it, because it takes a long time to break down. It holds that soil in place for a lot longer, and as it's breaking down, it's constantly adding compost or broken down organic material to your soil. Good man. Okay, we'll get the shredder on and we'll get all this shredded up. So all of these things, and we'll head down to the bottom of the garden with this. While I'm walking down to the bottom of the garden, you can see what I've already done is I've mulched every one of my garden beds. They've got a layer of straw, manure, wood chips, leaves, anything. This is one of the things that I always do, is whenever I'm collecting leaves and leaves are falling on my garden beds, I never take them off the garden beds, because they just act as, they're just doing what nature's intended to do. They're naturally mulching my soil.
Tomatoes that I can pick.
There's no more tomatoes, buddy. It's a bit cold for tomatoes.
Too fun.
Okay, so this is one of the things that you need to be doing, is building your connections, right? Now, these are oak leaves. I haven't got an oak tree in my garden, but my neighbour collects all his leaves and he bags them up and he gives me his leaves, and in the springtime I'll give him a few plants. Or when I get some vegetables, I'll harvest some vegetables, I'll give him some vegetables from my harvest. And as long as you're being nice to your neighbours and you're sharing some of the produce, you'll see the amount of things they go out of their way to just give you and share and help. And that's one of the things that you'll get with people. People are inherently good and they're helpful. So all of these plants that I've just pulled up, like these chili plants, they don't need shredding. Just dump these on the compost pile. And I heard some professional gardeners on Gardener's World talking about how they don't compost during the winter because it's not an active time. Now I guarantee you that pile, by the time I come back in spring, look at the way I'm building it. I'm being very careless in the way I'm building it. I'm not expecting a hot compost pile, right? But that pile, I'll come back in spring and that pile will have broken down nicely. I'll be able to harvest compost off it. But one thing I will share with you about compost is don't expect, the complete finished article. Don't expect what you'd buy from a shop. You're going to have to sift it. You're going to have to sift it into different grades if you want that sort of thing. If you're just using it as mulch, you can take this in a matter of months, take it down and just mulch it. you can take it as it is and use that as mulch, not a problem at all. Quite a few people have been asking me about worms and worm bins, and this is my worm bin, and this is how I'm protecting my worm bin at the moment. So I'm getting fresh litter straight from the chicken house, so chicken bedding, it's got loads of straw in it. I'm just bringing that and just dumping it straight on top of my worm bin. It's already got a layer of cardboard and a layer of organic matter underneath that. Now if you look down there, look, who says worms aren't active during winter? And we're just coming out from a week of -5 temperatures. Now, as long as you're looking after your pets and your workers, yeah, giving them plenty of food to eat and giving them plenty of protection, they're going to be working hard for you. I'm going to just cover that up. Because I use a lot of kitchen scraps and a lot of green materials in my worm bin purely, and a lot of manure, it can get a little bit acidic. So I've added wood ash, right? And this will balance it out a little bit. It'll give them something gritty to eat on, help with the digestion, but it will also balance the chemical pH out. And it'll just make sure that it's a little bit more alkaline and a little bit more neutral rather than being so acidic. What you will notice in these confined spaces is the soil tends to be quite dry. And we've got to find a way of getting this soil properly saturated so it doesn't dry out as much in the summer and your plants can thrive in here. So what I do is I channel there's a footpath that runs through my neighbour's garden into mine. So what I do is I channel any water that comes flowing down that footpath, and I channel it into this greenhouse. The channel's filled up a little bit with all our walking, but go and have a look at a video that I did. I'll leave a link for it up here on how I channel water from the footpath and get it to soak into the soil here. I'm going to clear this up, get rid of the weeds, and I'm going to give it a good mulch of basically the rough material from the stuff that I sift off from my compost. That's all going to get dumped on here, and we're going to end up with a couple of inches of mulch on here, and that'll be it. I've got seeds scattered everywhere, right? We don't know what seeds they are, but they're scattered everywhere. I need to go through my seed piles, decide on what I've got and what I'm planting. I mean, there's even garlic cloves here that could do with planting. So we'll decide on what we're doing, get all this planted, sort through our seeds, and we'll get our seed order in. This is an important job that you need to be doing now, while everything's quiet, before everything gets hectic in a few months' time. So there's a list of jobs that you can be getting on with this month, or over the course of the next couple of months before spring starts. So I'm going to leave it there for this one. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe for regular updates. If you'd like to support our channel, you could also become a patron. But I'll leave it there. I'll see you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.